Sorry about that. Hey, this is Andy over at Falco Canine Academy, coming to you live from California. It is a Saturday at 7:00. And, I like coming on and doing these shows every once in a while. I've learned, because I do another show on one of my other channels that has to do with a lot more stressful topics. And what I found by doing Falco Canine Academy and coming back and doing some more shows with the Falco Canine Dog Talk is that it relaxes me, because this is more fun and games, and I get to tell goofy stories, and I hope y'all like it. If you don't like it, let me know in the comments. Say, dude, I was watching, I was going through an old video I did. Something came up. Somebody commented on a YouTube video that I did. I'm not sure how long ago it was, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that, maybe even 3 years ago. But some comments still come up, right? And so what was interesting as I got two sides of the coin on the same video. One comment was, wow, I love the way you do your videos. It's really funny. It's engaging. You're talking about all kinds of stuff, and I find it really fun to watch. Another one saying, it took too long to get to the point. I got bored and I had to leave. So I'm not really sure which one it is, which one to do. So I'll get to the point right away. But I'm sure somewhere in here I'll have some little side stories that may or may not be interesting to you. But I will work it out at some point. All right. So a couple calls that have or messages that I've gotten recently, and I thought I'd come on and talk about them right away while they're still fresh in my mind. One of them is I got these dogs and they won't stop barking, and I've tried everything. I got the pennies in the can trick doesn't work. Yelling and screaming, throwing rocks at them doesn't work. I've tried everything. I can't get the dogs to stop barking. And then another call I got, and it has to do with separation anxiety, which is a very funky, difficult thing to deal with and to fix in some ways. But I'll discuss some of the things that you can try for now to see if you can get your dog to stop stressing out when you leave the house. And then if not, you call our office, and then we will take you through some steps. And there's like 4 or 5, actually there's more than that, but there's several different ways of tackling separation anxiety, because sometimes it comes and stems from different types of things. So we'll talk about that next. All right, so let's get to talking about barking and bark collars and why I recommend them so highly, and that is because they work. That's simply. Now, I understand. I want to talk about the controversial part about it, where people say electric collars are harmful for dogs and they're so inhumane and they're horrible, blah, 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 blah. All right. So we're going to discuss that. And I'm going to get some comments, people, and this is I have other videos that talk about bark collars and pinch collars and other things. And, people go crazy about it and want me to be arrested for animal cruelty. But I'm going to tell you that any tool that you use for training can be misused. Even food reward training. I've probably seen food reward training misused and used in an inhumane manner more often than any of these other tools. I'm just here to let you know, I've been training dogs for a very long time. I've been saying 30 years for about 30 years. So it's probably going on about 40 years I've been training dogs, working with dogs. And so I've seen a lot of different techniques. I've seen a lot of different things. I've seen some of the worst of the worst in dog and police dog training, which I spent a great deal of my time training police dogs for years. I've seen some of the worst things done to dogs. And if you ever want to hear some stories, just get a hold of me, buy me a couple beers. I'll tell you some stories. And I've shared some of those stories on some of these videos that I've done. But in regard to electronic collars, in fact, I'm here to tell you that if they are used correctly, they can actually be one of the most humane ways of training a dog if the dog understands what it's all about. Now, this is the problem with electronic collars, is that people buy them and get no instruction. The instructions that come with the electronic collars, even the best electronic collars like Dogtra, which is the one I'm going to recommend, I like it the best. I do like Tritronics, but I like Dogtra a little bit better. But they don't give you much instruction. They just kind of leave you, and they're hoping you're probably going to watch a YouTube video or hire somebody that knows what they're talking about. And I'm here to tell you that most dog trainers do not know how to use electronic collar. I know. That's not to me. I'm not trying to say that so that you only come to us. I'm just telling you, I've gone through seminars. I've sat through, and not too long ago, I sat through a horrible seminar, 2-day seminar on electronic collars. As a, I go in not as a stooge. People know who I am for the most part. Sometimes they deny they know who I am. So that's all good. I don't really care. But I'll go and listen. And I don't know that sometimes people act weird when I'm in a class and listening to them and start doing things maybe they wouldn't normally do. I don't know. But the last one I went to was 2 days of horror. And I actually only stayed for just a few minutes on the second day and just left because it was, and you can't talk to dog trainers. People will say, well, why do you say, listen, you can't talk to dog trainers. I'm telling you, when a dog trainer, as soon as you begin to tell a dog trainer that, hey, maybe, you're a jerk, and it goes poorly very quickly. It's like other things right now in our world. You can't be on the other side of something. And if you are a jerk. So, and so that I'm telling you this because I want you to know that same thing with pinch collars. Pinch collars for some dogs in some situations will actually save the dog's life, and people will, be angry on a video that I talked about a pinch collar. I can't believe you're talking about that horrible, nasty thing. It's going to kill a dog and it breaks a dog and they're inhumane. No, I've used pinch collars and taught pinch collars and trained people how to use pinch collars with dogs that had there was no other solution for the human. The pinch collar is more for the human than it is for the dog. Now, the dog wears it, but it's for the human in the sense that sometimes they have a dog that requires the human to have more power. Now, you have to train the human on how to manage that power and how to manage the collar. Same thing with the electronic collar. When you use an electronic collar in the proper way, first teach the dog about the electronic because it's completely foreign to a dog. Then the dog can understand the collar. The dog can understand how in many ways it is in control of the collar, of the stimulation, not the human being. That's what you really, truly want. And again, I'll have people argue with me about this too. But I'm telling you, you want the dog to believe that it is in control of what is happening to that collar, not the human being. It's completely different than anything else. It's completely different than a choke chain or training collar, different from the flat collar. It's different than food reward training, different than toy reward training. It's different than all those other training methods in the sense that all that comes from the human. In the electronic collar world, it is best if the dog believes that it is the dog that's in control of the collar. By having good behavior, the dog turns off the collar. By having bad behavior, the dog has set off the collar. So you want to put in the dog's mind that he isn't or she is in control of that collar, and it is she that is causing it to go off or causing it to go on. All right. Now, and I can talk about remote collars and do that, but that's not what this one is about. This has to do with barking and bark collars, why I recommend bark collars. Bark collars are the only tool that I know of that correct the dog for what it's doing at that moment, like instantaneous. And that is the best kind of dog training, right? When you can get into a dog's head and make them believe that somehow there's a dog god watching over them and they're being either corrected or rewarded based on their behavior, the training goes really fast. The problem is in other types of training, we're very slow, right? We're late to the game. We correct too late. We reward too late. We reward when we should be correcting. We correct when we should be rewarding. It's all a big mess. The bark collar is a genius piece of equipment. Let me share my screen. I'm going to show you. You may not know what one looks like, so let me go ahead and share my screen and show you the dog trick collar and what it looks like. And it is, again, it's one of my favorites. I do like it. They've done a good job. They're right here in Southern California. I can run down the freeway to their office and if I have to. They've never, they've never been bad to work with. Their support has been great. If something goes wrong, they're quick to fix it. And again, they're just, I think they're really good people. Unless they've changed owners since the last I worked with them directly, they are fantastic people. Now, they have a bunch more. They used to only have 2 models, and then they went to 3 models because they added a model for a small dog. But now they have this IQ Vibe, and I've never used that one, so I couldn't tell you anything about it. But the IQ Vibe, which is this one right here, let me go ahead and click on that, and maybe you can see it. Let me see if it shows up. Yeah. Just to tell you what that one's all about, just so you know, is it says that this one is for sensitive dogs that the electronic stimulation may be too much and cause them some grief. So this is a purely vibration only. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've seen dogs that have a very big reaction to just the vibration. So this will be, really good for some dogs. And I'm hoping that it has different levels. I don't see the dial on it. It probably is. You probably have, a very low vibration and a very strong vibration, I am guessing, because that's what you have on the electronic collar too. You have very low level and then very high level. I'm trying to read here. I should have read it before I went on live. The sensor distinguishes the dog's bark from the surrounding noises. The IQ vibe is a rechargeable, blah, blah, blah. 3 levels. So let's see. The no bark collar is the first vibration only no bark collar for sensitive dogs with 3 levels of vibration strength. There you go. I knew that it had to have it. It was right there at the top too. I just skipped, I always skip to the end of a story. That's kind of one of the things that I do. So now they have just the vibration and then they have the electronic stimulation. All right. Why the electronic collar? Again, it is the only tool that I know of that will give the dog a correction at the moment of the violation, the bark. And the problem with barking dogs, and especially those that are in a backyard or those barking dogs in the house or outside the house when you're not home, is that it's impossible to correct the behavior when you're not around, or when you're at a distance, or when you're sleeping. Right? If you're home and the dog is barking in the backyard, the dog will get 5 or 6, 10, 15 barks in before you finally go outside and do anything about it. And so what the dog ends up learning is that it can get out 5 barks. And I'm just using a number. Some dogs will get out 5 barks before the correction, whether it's yelling, throwing a rock, throwing the can of pennies, squirting the dog with the hose, running out there and stomping your feet, or grabbing the dog and putting him in the kennel, right? The dog goes, well, gosh, for some reason, my human hates the 5th bark. Right. And so it's that darn 5th bark. And so maybe some dogs will bark 4 times and not bark 5 times. Right. And then they'll wait, about 15 minutes and then they'll go, all right, here we go again. Bark, 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 bark. But not that 5th one. So dogs can get attuned to it's that thing, whatever that thing is, then that's what causes the bark to stop. It could be the number of barks. It could also be the sound of the doorknob, right? Wherever it is on your house. As a dog, and I'm using a dog in the backyard as the example. Dogs in the backyard, the dog bark, bark, bark. And what happens is it's the doorknob sound that causes the dog to stop barking. The doorknob being when you're going outside to do whatever you're going to do, right? Squirt it with a hose, throw something at it, whatever it is you're going to do. So the dog understands that when I hear the doorknob, I have to stop barking, because that's when dad or mom comes out and then crap happens and I have to stop barking. So now what happens when you leave home? When the car leaves the driveway, the dog goes, oh, all right, I'm not going to, bark, bark, bark. Your neighbor's calling the police or they're calling animal control and they're saying, oh, I got a neighbor. The dog's he's constantly barking. As soon as they leave to go to work or as soon as they leave to go to the store, the dog starts barking and blah, blah, blah. And so now you have this dog who is fully aware of when he can bark and get away with it and when he doesn't get away with it. The sound of the doorknob, the sound of the pennies rattling, but that's only after he's barked several times, upsetting everybody. And the problem never goes away. That's the other thing. The problem always exists, and you're constantly battling a dog that has this just annoying habit of barking at leaves falling, children talking, neighbors talking, what have you, whatever it is, the lawnmower from the neighbor, the dog barks because of that, whatever that is, that thing is that's causing the bark. So the electronic collar now is an electronic collar that the doctor I'm going to talk about specifically, and others have the same thing, including Tritronics. And that is there's a pad that's on the inside. Let me see if I can go back to it. And I don't know if it actually shows it on their website. It might. Let me look really quick and see if it actually shows what that looks like. No, I don't see it. Gosh, I wish they gave you a view. Here's the quick view of this one. Well, it doesn't show it. You see, this is the back side of this collar where you see that little green light and the screws. On the opposite side, there's something like a little drum. And that drum picks up the vibrations of the dog's bark, of the dog's vocal cords. And when I was reading those instructions, you saw or heard me say that it distinguishes between the dog's bark, the vibrations of the vocal cords, and the ambient sounds that are around. So a Harley Davidson motorcycle goes by, a I don't know, the other dog barks, right? That kind of stuff. It won't be set off by that. It is only set off by the vibrations of the dog's vocal cords and on their throat. And so when the dog barks, it'll send the stimulation into the dog's skin, electronic stimulation, kind of like rubbing your feet on the carpet. And when you touch somebody, that kind of feeling. And there's different levels with the electronic collar. I'm not going to talk about the vibration collar because I've never used it. I have used it in regard to remote collars, but not bark collars. Two completely different things. All right. So you have a dog that barks. The vibrations from the vocal cords sets off the drum, and then the stimulation tells the dog that what he's doing right now is wrong. Now, what I'm going to tell you right now is if you're using a collar for the very first time on a dog that's never had one on before, I always recommend starting at like a half. It usually goes from 1 through 10 as far as the levels. Level 1 is the lowest, 10 being the highest and strongest. Start at a half. Put it on the dog. Put the dog in the backyard and wait for that moment when the dog barks, and the dog will probably go bark and nothing will happen. All right. On sensitive dogs, you might get a bark. Like you'll get this little like hiccup, like bark, and the dog will look around, like look between his legs. You're like, what the hell was that? What was that feeling that I had in my neck? And then he'll bark again, bark. And at a half, you may get something, right? You'll get a change in pitch. You'll get a dog looking around and that kind of stuff. And that means that it's working, but it's not strong enough to get the dog to stop, right? The dog's really not sure what that little feeling is. It's something, but it's not much. If a dog has no reaction, that means that stimulation is not strong enough for that dog. There's a lot of reasons why dogs have different levels, like a German Shepherd or Belgian Malinois or a Rottweiler may not feel the stimulation until you're at like a 2 or a 3, and sometimes a 5 with some dogs. It has to do with chemistry, it has to do with the dog, how direct contact it is on the skin, a bunch of different things, how much fur they have, all that kind of stuff. So there's different reasons why some dogs will not get stimulated at the lower level, but then one dog will be at a 3, another dog will be at a 4, and whatever. All right. But you got to start at the low level. This is really important that you listen to me, because again, remember, we're teaching the dog what the dog is in control of. If you set it too high and have it at an 8, then the dog barks, then it hurts really bad, and then the dog yelps, it goes off again, then the dog yelps and screams, and then it goes off again. And now the dog has no idea what the hell's going on, right? The dog doesn't know why this is happening. It hurts, and it's causing the muscles to contract, and now the dog is in panic mode because it doesn't understand it. You see, so you've gone from starting at a low level to teach the dog what it's in control of, as opposed to going to a high level, and now the dog has no clue what's going on. It doesn't know if it's standing on something it's not supposed to, so it begins running around the backyard. It barks again, and then it starts going through the whole process again, and the dog doesn't understand what's happening. So please don't do that. That's how these things get a bad name, because people go, what? I mean, this dog's pissed me off. He's caused me to spend $80 on this thing, and I'm going to turn it up to a 9. And when he barks, he's really going to feel it, right? No. Do not do that. Do I know that people have done that? Absolutely. I know people have done that. They get angry at their dog. People have a love-hate relationship with their dog. They love their dogs, but there's moments where they hate them and they get really angry and they want to do bad things to their dog. And so be very, very careful about what it is you're doing. If your sound effects are spot on. Thank you. I've heard it enough through my a lot of dogs in kennels. I had an indoor kennel system. And, simply our offices were in there, you're on phone calls, and many dogs had to wear bark collars. So we had this, but we did it in such a way that no dog had any adverse effects. It wasn't that big of a deal. And then I'm going to get to this part that I was going to say next. I don't want to confuse anybody. All right. So finding the dog's level is really important. All right. Start with a half. If the dog barks, nothing happens. If the dog doesn't look around, if the dog doesn't go bark, doesn't do one of those things, then you want to go to a 1. Right. And then if that doesn't get anything, then you go to 1.5. Right. And very slowly, incrementally, and get to that point where you get a dog that goes bark, bark. And now the dog looks around, what the hell? And the dog may do it one more time, bark, bark, and then stops. And now the dog is beginning to understand. It's the bark. It's my bark that's causing that collar to go off. Right. And the dog goes, dang it. What the hell? Right. And the dog may wait a couple hours. Or forget about it. And then maybe the next day will come around and the dog will do it again. Bark! Oh, dang. It's that thing. It's this stupid thing, this new collar. I thought I was getting new bling. And instead I'm getting something that's telling me not to bark. Right. And so the dog now figures out, with that collar on, understand what I'm saying here. With that collar on, I cannot bark. There's no way around it. I'm telling you, there's no way around teaching the dog that just barking is bad. At some point, if you are consistent enough in putting this collar on at certain times of the day, like at night, right, you put it on before you go to bed, you take it off in the morning. I'll get to why you do that in a minute. But the dog will understand, okay, I'm not supposed to bark at night. And maybe you'll have some dogs that just forget the habit of barking at night at all the little sounds because it hasn't done in such a long time, and then the dog will learn not to bark. Sometimes, I would say more often or not, you simply just cannot forget to put that collar on. All right. And so you have it between, again, the time you go to bed and then the time you wake up, you take it off and put it on the charger. All right. So very important to understand that part of it is that you want to set the dog up for success, not for failure. Set the dog up for success, not for failure. The idea behind some people getting a bark collar is they want to set the dog up for failure. No. You want to set the dog up for success through incremental failure until the dog learns that he's in control of the collar, or she's in control of the collar. The dog understands that if I bark, I'm going to set that stupid thing off. So I'm not going to do that because I'm in charge and I'm going to learn not to bark. And the dog just simply doesn't bark. All right. Okay. So now that's why the bark collar is so fast, and it happens quickly. Did you hear me say that the dog will bark maybe once or twice? Some dumb dogs will bark maybe 4 times at the most, and then they most of them learn it. Now, Belgian Malinois, they can bark maybe 9 times before they figure it out. It is possible. I don't know what it is about the Malinois, but sometimes they're just so different than other dogs. And so you got to make sure that. All right. Now, the next thing it's really important is to understand that the collar cannot be on 24 hours a day or 48 hours a day or, for days, right? The dog cannot wear that collar on. You got 2 prongs, and I don't have one. I usually have one handy, but I don't know why I don't have one and didn't think about looking in the garage before I did this. But there's 2 prongs that touch the dog's skin. They have to touch the dog's skin. So this means you have to put the collar on snugly, right? You put the collar on so that the drum is on the dog's throat. It can't be on the dog's back of his neck. It can't be anywhere else. I mean, I've seen it work when it's other place because some dogs will shake their head and get it on the side. The dog will bark and it'll still go off. But it's better if it's right here on the dog's neck. And you got these 2 prongs that are touching the dog's neck, right? And he's moving around, he's running, he's jogging, and it rubs the neck. And if you leave it on for too long, it'll rub and it'll cause a rash. And then in some cases, the dirt will get in there. There'll be an infection, and then you have a hot spot on the dog's neck. Don't do that. Just put it on for the period of time that you don't need the dog to bark, and don't forget to take it off. On occasion, you'll forget, and you'll find out, you'll get a hot spot. It'll be really bad, and you'll probably not do it again because it's not pretty, and it smells, and it's bad. Do not do that. All right, put it on the dog. Have a routine, right, with the kids or the spouse, that at night before you go to bed, especially in the early stages when you're trying to teach this dog not to bark at night, is that it goes on before you go to bed. Wait as long as you possibly can, when you're still in your, street clothes maybe, or in your pajamas, and put the collar on, go to sleep. I mean, it's most common probably at night or when you go to work, right? So you put it on and then you make sure it's snug. You want to make sure that it's contact. You try to put your fingers underneath the collar, and it should be difficult to get your hand underneath the collar, and the dog should be able to breathe. All right. If the dog can breathe and you can barely put your hand underneath there, it's probably on correctly. And then you kind of like rub it in so that it gets past the fur, especially on a German Shepherd that has longer hair or a dog that has longer hair. You want to move it around so that it gets through the hair and actually touches the skin. And then you leave it on. All right. And then in the morning, when you wake up, when you go to feed the dog in the morning, you take the collar off. Use kind of that as your reminder that at feeding time in the morning, if you feed your dog twice, once at night and once in the morning, that's usually a pretty good time to put the collar on and take it off. And then what you want to do with the collar is you put it on the charger. Do not set it on top of the refrigerator in the garage, or don't set it on top of, one of your something outside, because the dog will get it and eat it, or you will lose it, or it won't get on the charger and it won't be charged for you the next time. Now, they hold a charge pretty good. But I would just say, just out of habit, you want to make sure and put it on the charger. All right. But always put it on and take it off. A couple hours, 6, 7 hours, 8 hours is fine. 10 hours is good too, but after that, you're getting to a point where you may cause the dog some injury on the skin. You want to allow time for the dog's skin to heal. All right. And again, that could be the opposite. It could be when you go to work, you put it on, and when you get home from work, you take it off. Whatever your routine is. All right. Let's see what Dean has to say. Dean's usually pretty smart here. So the dog wear the collar all the time? So no. Okay. The answer to that. Good. I tried the reward system to stop barking. It has been futile. So I ordered a bark collar to try to control it. Good. Hopefully you ordered it from us. Falco Canine Academy. 714-990-9010. But it's too late. It's not like you already ordered it. She barks during the day at any time, at anything. Yeah. So you just put it on during those times. Again, some dogs may learn just to not bark. After you break that habit and have it a long enough period of time, it'll go away. But again, you want to understand that sometimes the dog knows when it's on. Okay, one other thing that's really important, especially in the early stages, dogs have fantastic hearing, and just the senses are like superpowers. Their senses are superpowers. I am of a firm believer that they know when the collar is charged and when it's not. Everything that's electronic makes a noise. Everything that's electronic makes some type of humming noise or something. We can't hear it, but if you put even the dog trap there to your ear, you can slightly hear this a little noise. I don't know, but you can hear something, right? I'm sure the dog can feel, and I'm sure that some dogs, because what else do they have to do all day or all night? Is they're laying there and they're thinking about you. They're thinking about whether they should dig a hole and get the sprinkler system, or should they pull the cables off of the wall for the cables for the television. They're thinking whether they should chew a hole through your fence. They're deciding where they should do, right? And besides that, what they're doing is going, wow, this collar, I can hear it. It's driving me crazy. I can hear this humming at night. But they may learn. And I think that some dogs have learned, because I know dogs that will bark when the collar is not charged, and they will not bark when the collar is charged. It happens. So I would always keep it charged, right? Some people think, well, I'll just use a dummy collar when after a while, and the dog could just do that. It may work. Some dogs, some dogs may fall for the dummy collar. Some dogs do. In regard to remote collars, that kind of stuff, I've seen some dogs fall for it and that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty sure that they can hear the humming of the electronic collar. All right, so I covered that it is one of the greatest tools for fixing this problem, because it corrects the dog when you're not around, corrects the dog when you're asleep, and you don't have to run outside and throw a can of pennies at the dog, or the reward system like Dean was talking about. It really, it's the most effective. It corrects the dog at the moment. It's the best form of training that you get, where it's instantaneous when the bad behavior is happening, and then stops as soon as the dog gives you good behavior. So you got bad behavior, correction, good behavior, no barking, nothing happens. Perfect. It's a perfect system, and it's fantastic. And it doesn't continue to shock the dog for long periods of time. That's what people believe, right? They hear, oh, the dog electronic, you're shocking the dog. You're shocking the dog. And the thing is, well, it only shocked him like 3 times, and he doesn't do it anymore. I put it on. It's available. And if he does bark, it will get him again, but it's unlikely that he'll get a correction again. And the dog just simply learns. The dog knows that I can't bark. And that's why it makes it so great. The next thing, of course, is, like I said, you can't have it on 24 hours a day. You only put it on for the period of time that you don't want the dog to bark, and then you take it off. Another important thing is you want the dog to be a dog on occasion too. You can't have a dog that has holding in whatever it is that he wants to bark. The barking is letting out some type of anxiety, right? In the case of Dean's dog, the barking at anything is that it's probably just thinking that it's chasing all this crap away. A rat, a bird, a possum, the neighbor, the kid skateboarding by, right? The dog's that anxiety is bark, go away. I don't like you. Bark, go away. Stop. Bark, run away, right? Or excitement. Sometimes dogs bark at squirrels because the squirrels run, right? Oh, look at I scared the squirrel. Or the mailman, right? They think that they bark at the mailman goes away. He does it 6 days out of the week at the same time every day. It's so cool, right? The mailman comes, I bark, he goes away. And the dog walks around the backyard. Yeah, man, I kicked that mailman's ass. And I barked at him and he ran away, right? And so there's also that thing that's going on. So it's either fear, or the dog has learned that it's got power in its bark, whatever it is. You want sometimes the dog to have that moment where it can bark, and it's okay. The reason dogs became domesticated animals is because of their bark and their howl. Because back in caveman days, the wild dog used to follow the tribes as they moved through the desert or the forest or the jungle, because they would always leave food behind, right? They'd always throw the little bit of food that was uneaten. And these pack of dogs discovered that, hey, these humans are pretty cool to hang out with because they leave food. And what happened was the dog would begin to bark when intruders would come, or a rival tribe would be lurking in the bushes, the dogs would bark, right? And then they would get their weapons and they'd be ready. And they go, wow, these are great alarm systems. So now they start feeding the wild dogs. And now the dogs become domesticated. And now you have an alarm system prior to ADT, right? So the dog was the early ADT for cavemen living in the wild. So we like the bark. Wait, that's the reason why they became a pet is because of that barking. So that is the great thing about dogs. Now, you want them to have that moment. So that's, again, another reason why you don't want it all the time. You allow the dog to be a dog. Let him bark every so often. You don't have to reward it and say, good boy. Just, leave him alone and ignore it. And then maybe you'll get a balance of good alerts, good barking when you need it. Like, somebody's coming to the front door, somebody's in your backyard and you it's a bad guy, right? We sometimes want that. And then we allow that to happen. All right. The other great thing about the Dogtra collar, let me go back to it one more time just to show you why I like the Dogtra and not some other collars, is because of that plastic. It has a very strong plastic belt for the collar part of it. And it keeps the prods or the prongs against the dog's neck consistently. Do not, I'm going to tell you right now, do not get a bark collar that has a cloth, flimsy collar, belt, because it'll allow those prongs to rock on the dog's neck and it'll come off of the dog's neck. And you may get one that's not connected. You need both touching to make the connection, to make the ground so that you get the electronic stimulation when the dog barks. And then the dog will learn that all he's got to do is rub the collar. Again, dogs are not as dumb as you think they are. They will rub the collar against something and they learn that when there's only one prong touching, or they can get all the prongs off touching the skin, it doesn't work and they'll bark through it. I'm telling you, I've had dogs that have collars on that are charged and have learned to manipulate that collar so that it doesn't work. They'll shake their head, right, and get it so that it's on the back of the neck, and they bark. And on an older model of bark collars, they would bark. But then you bring it, put it here, they would stop barking. Then they would shake their heads and get it go, and then they would start barking. All right. So you want a good firm belt. That's why I love the Dogtra. That's why I love the Tritronics. Anything else is pretty cheap. And one other thing about Dogtra and Tritronics, and again, I really like Dogtra, is that stimulation is consistent. That level, if it's a 3, is always a 3. And that's what you want. I've had other collars that we've tried. We've experimented with a bunch of them just to see what they're like, because people would want, hey, I got this bark collar. Oh, let me see what it does. And then one day a bark on that collar is perfectly fine. And the next day the dog barks and it causes the dog's fur to fall off because it's so strong. Right. And that's because that collar is not manufactured. It's manufactured in China. And you don't want a collar manufactured in China because it's just poorly put together. And now the collar is very inconsistent in its levels. All right. So stay with a good collar, spend $80, $90, whatever it is. I forget how much they are. Spend that money because it will work consistently. It'll get what you want. It's more humane for the dog, and the dog will understand it much quicker, and your training will go much faster. And if anything goes wrong with that collar, you send it back to Dogtra. They send you back a brand new one, or that's my history with them. And that's the other thing I like. When something goes wrong with it, I call them up and say, hey, the Dogtra collar is not working. I bought it 4 years ago, and they said, okay, send it in, and we'll send you a new one. They are fantastic. I hope they saw that policy. I should check before they have that policy, but they've always had that policy with us. And they always give us a brand new one back if something goes wrong. They're water resistant. Let's see if they're waterproof. Let me look really quick. They've always been water resistant. I'm not sure if it says on here. Let me look at one really quick. I'm hardly going to get to the separation anxiety. Hold on one second. Great plastic shield. I don't see if it says on here, but I believe they're water resistant, of course, because dogs are in rain all the time and that kind of stuff. Featured. Oh, here we go. HPP. Looks like it might be waterproof. I could be wrong. Look for yourself. Do I have to do all the work for you? I don't see on here. I know for sure that they can handle the water. I'm pretty sure that they're water resistant, very highly water resistant. And I'm thinking they're waterproof now too. I believe that they transitioned into a waterproof collar. I know the remotes are, because they're used in hunting all the time too. But yeah, spend the money. Don't go cheap. You go cheap on a bark collar, you're going to end up buying another one anyway. I'm telling you. And they just don't last. And these have a great warranty. All right, let me see. I used one that vibrates. Yeah, the vibrate one, it can work. I know a dog that we were training that on a remote collar, all we could use was the vibrate. The vibrate's a great a tool on a remote collar because you can make the vibrate mean something. You can make a dog down when he feels the vibrate. Because with many dogs, the vibrate doesn't cause the dog to go, whoa, most dogs just feel it and go, wow, that's a vibration. And then you can say, you can teach the dog to sit using the vibration. So at some point, you just hit the vibrate, the dog sits, or vibrate, dog downs, or vibrate, the dog returns. Right? That's always a good one. And so the vibrate in a remote collar could be used to mean something. It could be a command for a certain behavior. In a bark collar, it's for sensitive dogs. If you have a dog that cannot handle an electronic stimulation, then the vibration is a really good tool. And I would say use that because, again, it's because that tool corrects at the moment of the bad behavior and stops correcting when you have good behavior. And that is a perfect training system, right? Correction for bad behavior instantly. You go to good, stopping, and when the dog instantly gives you good behavior, and now that everything stops, and the dog understands that much easier. Let me see. Dean has a good one here. What do you recommend to stop my lab from jumping up on the back door when she's been outside and wants to back in? What are you trying? Well, yeah, I do a whole session here. Sorry, Dean, just giving you a bad time. Is it color that a remote? Yeah, the remote, yes. The remote can be used for that. But it's a little bit more complicated system of training in the sense that you have to teach the dog how to control the collar. It's a little it's different than the bark collar, but you have to teach the dog a number of behaviors with the electronic collar first, so the dog understands that it is in charge of that collar. There's people that use it in a completely different way, and I hate all the other ways people use it other than my system. My system is the best. I took it from some very fantastic trainers, and the name is escaping me right now. I believe they passed away now. Oh my gosh, what is it? The Dobbs have a great system of using the electronic collar. They taught it. I learned from them directly over a week-long period. I spent a week with them. They taught me how to use the collar correctly, and not many people that I know of really hold true to that system. People use other variations and kind of gone off into the weeds. I stick to that system. Their system was perfect, and it's always worked for me, and I've never changed from it. And I've seen people, again, go off the farm with some other stuff. I know I'm not answering your question, Dean, but yes, you can use a remote for that. But again, you have to teach the dog the behaviors before you get to the not jumping onto the screen. And it's a very effective way of doing it. It's a great way. You can sit on your couch, watching, your sermons on your church and correct the dog for jumping on the fence. Really easy. All right. Mine wears hers at the river. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's waterproof. I'm not sure why I'm having a brain fart on that. I'm pretty sure. But I would say they're probably waterproof. I use the bark collar for obedience too. And it's a whole nother story that it would cause my, I'm already on for 38 minutes. I have not gotten to separation anxiety, but I've used it for obedience. I've used it for aggressive dogs too. And so it's a really good tool. But the Doctra, again, is my favorite. You just call our office if you want one, 714-990-9010, 714-990-9010, and we'll ship it right to your house. All right. Let me talk a little bit about separation anxiety. I'm not going to talk that much on it because it's a very complicated issue in regard to dogs. I think I covered, let me just make sure I talked about everything with a bark collar. It's important. Can't be on all the time. It's got to be snug. Dog has to be able to breathe, but you shouldn't be able to get your hand too far underneath it. Waterproof, maybe. I'm pretty sure it is. I think I covered it all. All right. So the separation anxiety is, wow. It's for us trainers. One of the things that's very important for us to determine is what truly is causing the separation. What is the trigger, right? Sometimes it's the car keys that starts the process of the separation anxiety, right? As soon as I'm looking because my car keys are always on a hook right next to the door. If I had a dog in the house that had separation anxiety, the keys could be the trigger that starts the whole thing. And so what happens with some dog trainers, they try to fix other stuff, not realizing the trigger is the keys. So you can seemingly, as a trainer, fix something with the dog in the house, like stop chewing the couch when you're anxious, stop pulling the blinds off the windows, stop chewing a hole through the door, right? You try to work on that, but you've not fixed the trigger that has caused the anxiety. And so I think really one of the most important things that you want to have a trainer that really understands separation anxiety and where this needs to start. I've sat in people's homes during a period of time, not doing any dog training, but watching what's happening in the house and what's happening with the dog, right? Because you can see things. You can see things when the human moves towards the door. You see the dog get up and you see his eyes get really big, and he's like going, "Oh shoot, are you leaving?" Right? And you'll see that. But then when the handler goes, the owner goes towards the back door, the dog gets excited because now the dog knows he's going out in the backyard. She's like that, move it. And the dog goes, we're going to the backyard. We're going to go play. We're going to go swim, whatever it is, right? But then you move towards the front door where maybe that's where you always leave to go to work. And you'll see the dog's eyes get really big. And that's one of the triggers. And then maybe I'll give a suggestion. Hey, could you do me a favor? Where do you keep your purse? Well, I usually keep my purse, on the back of the chair in the kitchen. All right. Can you go to your purse and just like stick your hand in your purse, and then you see the dog eyes get big, right? The tail kind of goes down a little bit, or the dog has one of those nervous wags, like, are you leaving without me? Right. And so you're trying to identify. That's where the training starts. It doesn't start with, the dog always pulls down the blinds, or the dog always chews through the door, or the dog, barks and screams and howls and begins to tear the house apart, or begins chewing on itself, right? You don't start there because you're not fixing the problem. The separation starts with a different trigger. So figuring that, I hope I didn't beat that up too much, but it's really important to understand that the trainer understands where is this starting, and then you start from there. So when you start from there, quite often it can be a faster path or a more successful path to fixing separation anxiety, because now instead of there being sadness or worry when it goes to those things, you're now going to teach the dog that good things are going to happen when the keys are gotten, when the purse is picked up or hand stuck in, or when you go towards the front door. You're going to go towards the front door, turn around with some food. You're going to turn around and throw a tennis ball. And there's little tiny steps where you want to make sure you're not rewarding the fear behavior. You want to be able to reward good behavior. So you're going to have to start somewhere prior to getting the keys or prior to getting to that front door, and reward that behavior. And then you start working out. The reason separation anxiety training is difficult is because it's time consuming, and you have to be consistent, and it takes a little bit of time to get through that. So that's what I wanted to talk about first, is that identifying the trigger and working before the trigger, just a little bit before the trigger, if not a lot before the trigger, right? So that's where your training starts. All right. So just think about that. If that's something that you're dealing with right now, figuring out what that is and having that information handy to give the trainer. Now he's going to go, how'd you know to start there? Right. And you go, well, I watched this guy online and he's goofy, but he gave me this information. All right. So that's one thing. Then the next thing is, it's quite possible with some dogs, we've solved it with this, and that is being in a crate while you're gone is a better solution. Dogs can, if a dog can handle a crate and feels the crate is somewhat like his cave or her cave, maybe a place of security, as opposed to leaving the dog in the house to get into trouble through its anxiety, again, pulling something down, chewing through something, chewing on itself, and that kind of stuff, is that maybe understand, the power of crate training. Train the dog that the crate is a beautiful place for it to be early on in the dog's life, especially is really effective, and that the crate becomes the cave, the secure place to be while you are gone. The dog cannot get in trouble while it's in the crate. It can't tear down the blinds. It can't dig a hole through your doors. It can't destroy the carpets and your underwear and all that kind of stuff, your shoes. And so the crate can be a very beautiful thing for dogs that have destructive personalities when you're not present. And so consider that. So much of our training it can kind of consists of this kind of thing where, some things can be controlled through training, where we go, okay, we're going to go through these steps to train obedience, or we're going to train a dog to no longer be fearful of something, and we can do some things like that in training. Another thing that we look at sometimes as opposed to training is what can we do in the environment to change the environment from keeping the dog from getting into trouble and saving a whole heck of a lot of time. If we just change one or two things sometimes, then we solve the problem. We don't have to go through all the stress of training. That's not a very good way of running a business. business because now I'm not going to be charging, $1,500 for, a week of training or whatever it is. Instead, I just say, so what? It's like the phone call that I often tell about that I got one day early on in my career of the opening of Falco Canine Academy. Somebody called me and said, hey, I got this dog, man. He's chewed through like 5 hoses. I keep buying hoses and he keeps eating through them. And I need this fixed because I can't buy another hose. It's driving me crazy. And I said, well, with the hoses you bought, have you ever bought one of those, those caddies where you roll up the hose on the caddy and then it has wheels? He goes, yeah, I know those things, but no, I've never bought one. Why? He said, because what you can do is roll the hose up on the caddy. And when you're done with the hose, pull it into the garage and shut the door. And now the dog can't chew up the hose. And he goes, shoot, why did I think of that? And he goes, thank you so much. And I hung up the phone. I go, oh, man, I could have charged that guy $1,500 for training and trained the dog not to eat a hose. But instead, I lost a customer. And so he went out and spent instead $45 on a hose caddy and solved this problem. But what I learned is that, he was a happy guy, right? I don't know if I ever saw him later regarding something else, but, it might be one of those things where, you know what, I called this guy at Falcon Canine Academy. I thought it was going to take weeks of training and all he gave me advice over the phone and it solved my problem. And so he sounds like he knows what he's doing. You may want to call him, right? So you never know. Something like a good, listen, you don't need a dog trainer. You just need to put the hose in the garage. I go, because he does nothing else, right? No, he doesn't do anything. Does he jump the fence? No. Does he bark? No. Does he do other stuff? No, he leaves everything else alone. I don't know what it is about the hose. Well, put it on a caddy and take it in the garage. Okay. Solved your problem. All right. So that has nothing to do with separation anxiety, but I'm telling you that sometimes changing the environment or doing something different may solve your problem and save you a whole lot of time on your training. Crate training, please don't. These are two very controversial things. I can tell you right now that I get people all the time, in tears. I don't want to put my dog in a crate. It's a horrible. No, it's not. Dogs are they love. Have you ever had a dog that liked to go underneath the table, right, and hide underneath the table and kind of be underneath the table? That essentially is a crate, right? It's got a roof. The only thing is it doesn't have sides, right? It's where the dog likes to go and be secure. If you can replicate that in a crate through good, proper training, you don't take a dog by the fur and then throw it in the crate and shut the door, right? That's not a good introduction to a crate. A good introduction to a crate is take the lid off the crate because many of them are 2 parts, right? You take the lid off the crate, you feed the dog in the bottom part of the crate, and you put some bedding in there, maybe where the dog has a place where it can lay down, and you introduce it with just the bottom of the crate. At some point, maybe you put the top on and you do the same thing, but now you do it with the top on. The dog learns that, hey, this is a really cool space and place for me to be. You teach the dog place. The dog goes to his place. The dog goes in the crate with just the lid on, no door, right? And then at some point, maybe you put the gate on and you shut it, and then you open it back up, and now you close it for longer periods of time, and now you have a dog that loves his crate. I have so many dogs that maybe in the beginning did not like the crate. Now when the crate's anywhere near them and the door is open, they run inside and go inside. Not to hide from me, not because I'm a mean person, but that's where they feel secure and they love it. I've had dogs that love me and also love being inside their crate. I'm telling you, I've seen it 100 times. So the crate for a dog with separation anxiety may be a good place for that dog to be, unless the dog is hurting himself. And then the dog's going to be in there hurting himself. And so that's then you're going to have to look at some other stuff, maybe some medication too. Medication, there's some CBD oil, some other type of oils may be a solution to some separation anxiety if it's mild, but it's big enough that you want to address it and see if you can't fix it. So there's some oils and some other types of medication, some anxiety medication you can get from your veterinarian. All right. So I hope that kind of addressed. It's just that you need some professional help to kind of identify if it's really, really bad separation anxiety. And then some solutions, maybe a crate and some medication. So I hope that addresses that issue. And these are just questions I get over, a message in Messenger or a text message, or somebody calls me and says, hey, can you help me with these things? And that's kind of the discussion I have. When it comes down to training, we'll sit down and do a whole evaluation, try to figure things out, and then have a path that you can have. And we'll do it sometimes together. Sometimes I'll tell you what to do and you'll do it on your own. All right. How do I get your system? In regard to the electronic collar, I do have an old DVD. I can send you an old DVD that goes through all the steps. It is one of my first videos that I put together and created a training DVD on the electronic collar for the remote. It's still good today. I have a lot more hair, and I look a lot younger, the video itself is not fantastic. And neither is the sound probably, but it is. The system is the system. It always works. I can try to find a DVD and send it to you. I don't know if you have a DVD player. I've been trying to find a way. I'm sure there's a way that I just redo the whole thing. It's just having the time to do it. Or I can talk you kind of through it over the phone to some extent, or we could do a Zoom or a Skype and talk you through it and teach you some of the ins and outs about it too. And we can work out all the details. All right. Thank you, Dean, for asking that question. I think that's what the problem is about why she literally tries to eat her way back in. Once inside, she is perfectly fine. It's kind of funny because we're not out of sight, but rather just on the other side of the glass. Now, one of the things that and I'm not saying you did this, Dean, but one of the things that we did by creating that problem is that when she begins to go for the door or whatever it is that is causing, the damage or the thing that's whatever she is doing, what we sometimes respond to as a human, sometimes just going to the door and opening it up and telling her no is actually rewarding the behavior. I know that seems strange, but some dogs, even negative attention is a reward. And this happens with barking too, right? The dog will be in the backyard barking, right? And do this barking. And then you go outside, shut up. And the dog goes, wags its tail. Oh, hi. I know you're yelling at me, but I just wanted you to come out and say hi. It's okay that you're yelling. I understand you're upset at my barking, but my barking was to get you to come outside, and whether you're yelling at me, it doesn't matter. I just wanted you to come out and say hi. I don't know why I go to a little bit of flamboyant when that happens, but that's what I do. All right. So our actions at the time they're doing the behavior that we don't like quite often is rewarding that behavior. Right. Sometimes we don't want the dog to cause any damage, so we open the door really quick and let the dog in. And the dog goes, all right, that's all I got to do. I got to act like I'm going to scratch this freaking door. I'm going to scratch this door. I'm going to scratch, right? And then we go, you're going to scratch this. Open the door so you don't scratch the door. So then we just have to do it once or twice, right? We've only had to do it once or twice, and now the dog thinks that's it. But now you've created this monster. Now the dog scratches. Go, hey, they're not opening the door. They're not opening the door. Now they're open. What are you doing? Right. And it gets worse because now you're not opening the door on the second, scratch like you did just one time. The one time that you let the dog in when it was doing the bad thing, it can create this whole problem. And now you got to kind of backtrack and change it around. Sorry, I went crazy there for a second. All right. Sorry. I click on the same one. Our lab is crate trade. Awesome. When I put my shoes on, she knows I'm leaving, and she goes and gets in her crate. Perfect. That's exactly right. Yeah, she will crate on command. Perfect. The crate is a wonderful tool, and just I get so sad when people think that it's a horrible thing. I used to get it all the time. I remember a lady literally crying in the office. I used to for my obedience class that I did for several years. I don't do it now. Gina and Aldo and the team, they handle all the pet dog training now. But what I would do is on day one, they would come with no dogs. And I had a classroom in my office, and 10, 15 people would come on day one without their dogs. Some people would not follow direction. They'd come with their dogs. But I would tell them, come without your dog, because this is about you and what it is we're going to do. And I need to teach you first what it is we're going to do. And then we're going to go out in the field, and then we're going to do it on the following Saturday. And I remember that this issue came up with crate training and also not having the dog on the bed. Right, this dog had no respect for this woman. Through what I learned, and I think even an early evaluation, I could see the dog didn't respect her. The dog was overpowering her and just was running her life. And early on in our training, one of the things I talk about is that the one thing you may need to do is not allow the dog to sleep with you, and if possible, have the dog crate at night. And during periods of time where you can't pay attention to the dog. And this may be one of the things we may suggest to you. And this woman raised her hand. She goes, what do you mean I can't have my dog sleeping on the bed with me, or the dog sleeping on the couch? And what do you mean? I said, well, the dog has to understand that you are responsible for everything. You allow the dog to be on the couch. You allow the dog to be on the bed. You allow the dog to eat. You allow the dog to drink. You allow the dog to breathe. That's what we want the dog. And I was trying to explain to her that we love our dogs, right? But it's kind of like the children too. The children have to understand that everything in the house is mine. Their phones are mine. The PS4 is mine. Everything is mine. I allow you to use those things until you decide that you don't want to respect me. And so how I gain respect and how I gain your love is sometimes by taking those things away. Why? Because they're mine. They're not yours. Never, ever are they yours. And same thing with the couch, same thing. And so with the dog, it's often a couch. It's often, a place in the house. And the dog has to learn that those things are taken away until you can show me good behavior. And her dog definitely needed to understand respect. And that does not mean you don't love the dog. It just means the dog has to learn respect. And so I remember by the time we ended that class, she was sobbing so loud that I had to have a meeting with her after. What do you mean? This is horrible. I'm sad. I want my money back. And I go, well, you can, but I'm telling you, I've been doing it, at the time, I think I'd done it for 15, 20 years. And that was just the way that I had to explain it to her. But I'm sorry about that whole story. But yeah, she sobbed. And I think she continued with training. And I think in the end, she was happy, if I'm remembering. I didn't lose very many customers, but there were times where, you talk about crate training, you talk about maybe even the possibility of electronic collar or not feeding the dog. Sometimes we withhold food for a day, not forever. For a day. It's nothing wrong with a dog fasting for a day. As a matter of fact, it's very healthy. It's healthy for us to fast, and it's healthy for a dog to fast. I promise you. And sometimes fasting the dog for a day, making the desire for the food a little bit stronger, is a very effective way. Now, I'm not for starving a dog. No. That's the worst thing you do. You can make it so the dog is now panicked for food, and that's where I've seen food reward system be a completely inhumane way of training, where they starve the dog. And then they withhold the food and the dog becomes panicked that it may die if it doesn't eat. I've seen it. And I've seen dogs that are highly negatively affected by poorly done food-based reward training. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about fasting the dog for the day to make the desire for food a little bit stronger. And then now you feed the dog his whole ration through the training and through hand feeding. And the dog gives you good behavior, give him food. Dog gives you good behavior, give him food. Dog gives you good behavior, give him food. The dog doesn't give you good behavior, don't give him any food. Dog doesn't give you good, don't give me food. And then you come back a little bit later. Let's try this again, dog. I want you to sit. Oh, good. I'll give you some food, right? And so you can do it in that way, but you want to make sure that you understand that now you have to hold enough training in that day that the dog gets its full ration of food so that it can maintain a good health. But the food comes through the owner. Why? Because you own the food. He eats because of you. And now you get some really good respect from your dog. All right. So I went down a whole nother path there. I'm so sorry. All right. Should put one on people that shocks when they come within safety? Yeah, well, you could do that. I guess that's something we could do. We talked about that, putting on kids. I get that all the time. People always ask me, can I put one on my husband? Can I put one on my kids? You could, if you want to, if they'll let you, and then try it that way. All right. Hope I didn't go too far off the rails there, and I hope I kind of give you some things to talk or think about in regard to your dog. Understanding that you are the dog's God, so to speak, right? You're the God's dog. You're the dog's God, and the dog needs to understand that you need to be respected and loved, right? Who do we love more than anybody else? God, right? We love him and we respect him. We fear him. We fear God. A healthy fear of God is great. All right. A healthy love of God, a healthy fear of God is fantastic. And it's a really great system in regard to our religion or my religion. I don't know about yours. But there's a good, healthy fear. And that's kind of what you want from your dog too. A healthy fear. That doesn't mean you kick them. Doesn't mean you beat them. Doesn't mean you do anything like that. It just means the dogs understand that there's rules. The dog understands that there's boundaries. The dog understands that there's a process of things in your home. When you open a door, it doesn't mean run out. No, never does me opening a door. Does that ever mean that you push me out of the way and run out the door? Never, never. In the house, out the house, either direction, right? When we walk, you do not drag me around. No, that does not happen. You need to respect me and love me. Now, we can play pull, right? Sometimes, but not dragging out of disrespect, right? There's parameters that you have in there. So just understand that those things are important. Again, understand that the electronic collar, when used properly, can be one of the most humane tools that you can use, because if you do it right, the dog understands it much quicker than almost any other tool that's out there. And it's simply it becomes something that doesn't have to be used at one point if you do it correctly. It still needs to be on. But the dog understands when it's on that these things happen. And so the dog doesn't even question you. The dog just does what he's supposed to do. And that crate training is fantastic. If you do it correctly. Of course, everything that we're talking about, if you do it right, it's great. And so hopefully this has been helpful to you. All right. So I hope you had a great Saturday. I decided to do this show than my other show because, sometimes I need a break from all the anxiety. I was anxious yesterday about what was going on in California, and I just needed to take a break tonight. And I love talking about dog training. So I hope this has been helpful, and have a great, great night. Dean and everybody else that was on, nice talking to you, and take care. Have a great, great night.